This is ego-utilitarianism. This video is going to be about a recent debate I had with Stefan Molyneux. I originally called in to talk about why I reject the subjective theory of value, but it kind of got derailed into one of my new ideas concerning subjective and objective. I thought that subjective could only make logical sense as a subset of objective. And so I quickly brought up the idea, and Steph kind of latched onto this, and I wound up debating this instead of the subjective theory value. But so that's the setup for this clip. I brought up my idea of subjective being a subset of objective, and Steph is kind of challenging me on it, and I give him enough leeway to look up the dictionary definition. So let's watch the clip.
I mean, that's why I say if you were to just suspend like the fallacy that they're mutually exclusive and actually put it as a subset, everything starts to make sense. But we are kind of straying.
You mean if I accept your argument, then your argument makes sense? Well, of course it does. Absolutely. I fully agree with you that if I accept your argument makes sense. Unfortunately, that's just not how arguments work.
Well, that's how definition works. All definitions is internal, right? It's an internal adoption of how you refer to objects in reality, so that you just can so your brain can make sense of it.
Oh, so you're saying if I accept your definition, then
all definitions are arbitrary. You agree with that?
All definitions are arbitrary?
Yes. The dictionary is just a proposal of
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That's just, you and I could not have, and maybe it's because of the way you use language that you feel that way, but we couldn't have any kind of conversation if all language was arbitrary.
But we've implicitly agreed to use the English language, but to the degree of technicality for this debate.
Are you saying that in English, the arbitrariness of language means that one day I can refer to a tree as a tree, and the next day a tree can be a blowjob?
No. I mean, for instance, you gave, if you were to rewind the tape and listen to your definition of subjective, you've added to the definition. That's not what you'd find in the dictionary. And it'd probably be different. It'd be different in a philosophy dictionary.
Okay, let's go to the dictionary. Subjective, existing in the mind, belonging to the thinking subject rather than to the object of.
Okay, so at this point he references dictionary.com, and he reads the definition of subjective there, which is, let me get to that. Which is this. So I went to dictionary.com, and what I did was I copied and pasted all the relevant terms here that all these definitions are built upon, because I'm going to set out to prove that the dictionary.com reference was logically inconsistent, which I'm going to show you I had a hunch about, but didn't want to. It's something that's kind of tedious to prove, even though it's fairly simple as far as the explanation. Okay, so he was reading this: subjective, existing in the mind, belonging to the thinking subject rather than to the object of thought, opposed to objective. So that's what he's reading. So right off the bat, my claim that they were subjective was a subset of objective contradicted the dictionary definition, which declared they're opposed to each other, right, rather than to object of thought. And you can see objective here being a mirror image of subjective, being the object of perception of thought, belonging to the object of thought rather than to the thinking subject, opposed to subjective. So you can see there, you think from the declaration in these rather thans that they're mutually exclusive, but you'd actually have to check this definition and actually verify it, right? So you see here, I had a hunch to that, but didn't want to have to go through it because, you're in the middle of an interview. You're not there to, you're not on air to solve a math, to do a math proof, right? That takes a little time. It took me the better part of the day just to write it out formally. I mean, it took about a few minutes just to come up with the proof, but to write it out formally is very, very tedious, to say the least. Okay, so let's watch this clip where I actually had the hunch that they were logically inconsistent, but it didn't matter. All you had to do is just disregard it and listen to my definition set and do a logical analysis. So let's watch the clip.
Really strong case, which you didn't do.
That's what I'm doing at this point, right?
No, now you're stuck in the Wolf-Hamel thing, which you still haven't addressed.
I think I did. Well, I thought I did. Well, again, the logic part is compulsory. The definition part is arbitrary all the time. Anytime we work with, you know, I have had my training in math, so I know the importance of definition and the logical structure of your conclusions, right? I know definition is arbitrary. You can call it's just labels. They're just an internal mechanism for you to label something. That's all it is. Whether now that I see a dictionary definition, if I knew this by memorization, just by rote memory, I would have said, okay, I'm going to redefine it as such. I didn't see like, but you know, so I'm kind of thinking too much, right?
And here's my hunch.
Because you'd have to look at that too and make sure that they were mutually exclusive, right? So that's the thing. It might not be logically consistent with the dictionary. You're assuming that the dictionary definition is going to be logically consistent, right? It would be logically consistent if objective, the definition for objective would actually show that subjective is mutually exclusive from objective, not just from declaration, right? And I don't want to get into what the dictionary says. I didn't. That's not the purpose for an. That's not the.
So this video is in regards to that. I mean, just to show. Now that, you know, after the interview's done, I had time to actually look at the dictionary definitions and actually absorb them, what they actually say, because you have to. These are words. These aren't quantitative definition. It's not as easy to tell if something is a thought or an object as it is to tell if a number is greater than 0 or not. You know, it becomes like it's very tedious. So what I did was I actually looked at the dictionary definitions and I actually proved it. I proved the dictionary definition actually backed up what I said. Now in this proof, I'm going to show that the dictionary definition actually proves that subjective is a subset of objective. And that itself, that fact alone proves that they're not mutually exclusive. So it actually proves my case, or it actually contradicts itself if you take into account these added declarations they add onto the definition they propose here, right? So, okay. So I think I've copied and pasted all the relevant terms. I mean, I'm not going to look up some base terms like belonging or subject or mind. Just anything that can be ambiguous, I thought. Anything that could be relevant to my proof, in other words. So subjective, existing in the mind, belonging to the thinking subject rather than to the object of thought, opposed to objective. So there's two phrases here, rather than to the object of thought and opposed to objective, that declare this part mutually exclusive from this second part. So these are supposed to be mutually exclusive. Is it mutually exclusive? Existing in the mind, belonging to the thinking subject is supposed to be somehow mutually exclusive from object belonging to the object of thought. And you'll see it just reiterated here in the definition of objective, since it's a mirror image. Being the object of perception or thought, belonging to the object of thought rather than to the thinking subject, opposed to subjective. So you see here, it's incumbent upon whoever's referencing this to verify that this first part is not mutually exclusive from this second part, which is separated by the rather than, and re-emphasize with the added declaration here, opposed to. And so that's what I set out to do, and I claim that, well, you'll see if you have any strength in logic or logical proofs, or mathematics or training in formal training in mathematics, you'll see I'm right. If you don't, you're probably too stupid. I'm sorry to say. Okay, so object. That's one of the so it uses object of thought or perception, right? Object of thought, object of thought. So I had to look that up. So using dictionary.com, I chose the most pertinent alternate definition because the example was object of thought, right? So this is the example separated by the colon here. So obviously this is what, so this term object of thought that's used in the definition was referring to this alternate definition here, because there's several, but this is the one that obviously mostly applies because its example is exactly the phrase that's used, right? So object, anything that may be apprehended intellectually. And you'll note that I embolden the ones that can be ambiguously interpreted. So interpreted. So I had to look those up. Okay, not only that, but thought, right? So thought, the act of processing or thinking, mental activity, a consideration or reflection. So reflection, I'm just thinking, is like any recollection or remembrance. Consideration was an ambiguous term, right? So again, I looked up apprehend, to grasp the meaning of, understand, especially intuitively, perceive. So there's a bunch of terms there that mainly perceive that I look up. Okay, so may, so anything that may be apprehended intellectually, objects of thought. That's the example. Okay, say may, used to express possibility. Just a mere possibility can validate the use of may. Used to express opportunity or permission. So again, I'm focusing on opportunity. These are kind of synonymous. Like if you have any opportunity, that's some type of possibility for you to do it, right? So that's what it says, may be apprehended, not is apprehended intellectually. Just the possibility of you apprehending it makes it an object. Okay, so, and okay, perception, the act or faculty of perceiving. Okay, that doesn't help. Or apprehending by means of the senses or the mind. So again, the five senses or the mind, anything that has to do with those two is an act of perceiving. Okay, so I looked it up because of this, object of perception or thought, right? Okay, so to consider, and this is relevant here, a consideration or reflection in thought, right? To consider, to think carefully about, especially in order to make a decision, contemplate, reflect on, to think, believe, or suppose. I think there's two definitions I linked here. So this one, to think, believe, or suppose. So these are pretty low standards of consideration. To suppose something you might not know it, and you might make a false claim about, but that qualifies as consideration. Belief is not always true. All your beliefs are not true, so you can have false belief. Again, it's a low standard to consider something. You don't have to actually make a true consideration. Considerations can be true or false, apparently, right? So okay, so just so I don't bore the rest of the viewers who can't stand hard logic, rigorous logic, I'm gonna present the proof using words, right? So it's an informal proof. This is the thing I came up with in a few minutes of actually looking at the two definitions of subjective and objective. But the problem here is that when you present these informal proofs, you get people who, when you use words to present a rigorous proof, a lot of people, there's so many terms out there that weren't defined previously, little terms like I was just doing. I had to verify little terms that definitions were built off of. People interpret it weirdly, so I present this, in a post or something on a thread about this topic, and people can't accept it just because they'll rationalize it away with a bunch of words, and this video is directly directed toward them, toward those people who think they can think I'm using sophistry to prove something, and it's not sophistry, as you'll see in the logical part. I mean, the rigorously logical. So I'm going to present it just informally. You might think it's bullshit, but when I formalize it, you'll have no choice but to accept it, unless you're going to attack these pink portions here that I highlighted in that I color coded in pink. Okay, so let me present the proof. We're using all these definitions I have here. Now I've provided a link to my blog, which has this outline. So I'm making this outline accessible to everybody who watches this video. So you can, while you watch the video, I suggest you actually go to the outline, which I'm going to provide in the link below, and actually go with me. And actually, if you can, have two windows open where you have the view of all the definitions, like I am here, so that you can always refer to them, because that's what you have to do in a proof, especially with the pink parts. I don't mean to refer to female parts, but especially the pink parts of my presentation here, right? Whenever you get to a pink part, that sounded funny. Okay, whenever you get to a pink part, just have one screen referring to these definitions, so you can always refer to them and verify that I'm not bullshitting, right? What I'm not doing is sophistry. It's hard logic, or as hard as the logic you can do with this type of imprecise definition set. Okay, so here's the proof, the informal version. So at this point, you shouldn't be, I hope you're not bored yet, but you're going to get bored later when it gets rigorous. If you admit one can think of their own thought, then it follows that your thoughts can be the object of your thoughts and belonging to the thinking subject at the same time. Also, another person can think of your thoughts, making it the object of their thought and belonging to the thinking subject at the same time, right? So they can think of your thoughts and it still belongs to you. So again, in both cases, the thought that's being thought of is an object of thought and belonging to the thinking subject. And you'll see that it fits both of these criteria, right? Existing and belonging to the thinking subject and being an object of thought. Again, it's being an object of perception or thought and belonging to the thinking subject, right? So this can't be, right? This rather than, it's contradicting itself. You can't put this rather than in these two, between these two parts. They're not mutually exclusive. I've just shown an element that exists, that one's own thought. And furthermore, so this proves that subjective and objective are not mutually exclusive, right? Because I brought up any thought, right? Any thought can be thought of either by the original thinker or someone else. I can try to think of what you're thinking. Any attempt to, the may part, possibility. But even if you don't accept that, just, you can think of your own thought. You think of your own thought by default when you construct it, right? So, okay, this proves that they're not mutually exclusive. Now this applies to all thought. Every thought this is valid for, right? Therefore, subjective is a subset of objective. And I'd have to show that all thoughts, that subjective things and thoughts are the same thing. So that's one of the things I have to prove in order for this to hold, which I do. Okay, so here's a little disclaimer. Before I get to the rigorously logical proof, right? So if you're communist, you're probably math averse. So you might want to fast forward to the conclusion part. But I suggest you try to bear with me, and maybe you'll learn something. I hope it's interesting, but maybe you'll pick up some things about actual rigorous logic or mathematics, God forbid. Okay, so in math, the longer you use words or phrases or a wordy rationalization or a verbose rationalization to prove what you want to show, the more likely the chance that it is fallacious. So any weaknesses in the proofs or proof I present here will be the portions in which I use rationale instead of mathematical set law. Since I am confident in my reasoning skill, I will highlight these portions in pink. So if you want to attack this proof, your best bet will be to attack the portions in pink. Okay, so let me begin the proof by just putting everything in set notation, right? So every definition represents a set, right? Anything that fulfills the definition or fits the criteria is an element of the set. So anything that fits this criteria is subjective. It's an element of subjective things. Anything that fits this definition is an element of objective things. Anything that fits this definition is an element of objects. Anything that fits this definition is an element of the set thoughts, anything that fits this definition, and so on and so forth. Okay, so you can rewind the tape if I talk too fast. So tape. Okay, that shows my age. Okay, you can rewind the video. Rewind. You can go back in the video if you think I talk too fast on any of these rigorous portions. So okay, in set notation, let me just formalize everything. So the set. So let me say. Let me name some sets. Right. So there's the set S, and that's the set of all subjective things. There's the set O, the set of all objective things. There's a set O prime. So you see that apostrophe to distinguish it from this O, because this is the set of all objective things. This is a set of all objects. Remember, there's two terms here, objective and object, and I want to make a distinction if there is any. At least I'm actually going to prove these are the same sets. Objective things and objective and objects, they're the same set. Okay, so O prime, the set of all objective things. You don't know that just from quick inspection, but through logical analysis, I prove it. Okay, and if there's any weaknesses, you'll see it in pink. And I don't think there are weaknesses at all. I mean, they're the best you can do with non-quantitative definition. Okay, so T, the set of all thoughts. Okay, so here's some mathematical law, right? In order to, and I provide a link here where you can verify what I'm saying. The how to prove two sets, subset A. I mean, a set A is a subset of B. Okay, so in order to prove a set A is a subset of B, you have to show that all elements of A, everything in A, is also in B, right? So A element, the set A, therefore A is an element of B. Thus, A is an element A implies A is an element B. So it follows that A is a subset of B. Okay, so this is a proof of a subset, right? A of B. It doesn't prove the other way around, right? Just because you prove this doesn't mean B is a subset of A. No, that's an added proof. You're gonna have to prove it the other way around. B element B, therefore B element A, right? Instead of A element A, therefore A element capital B. You know. Okay, so capital letters represent set. Lowercase letters represent elements of the set. Okay, so okay, so now that I established that, I can use this form to prove that T is a subset of T prime, or in other words, all thoughts are a type of objects from the definition, right? Again, you have to always keep referring back to this definition set and see if my things are all logically consistent. Okay, so here's the pink part. So this is a possible weakness for you critics out there. Okay, since all thoughts, all T element big T. So all thoughts, since all thoughts may be apprehended, and then again, these are emphasized so you can refer back to the definitions if I'm using it properly. And these are all from dictionary, one source, dictionary.com, and I chosen the best definitions that not to suit my purposes, but that fit what the definitions that use them, what I think what a reasonable person would think they chose the best possible alternative to make sense of the definition. Okay, so since all thoughts may be apprehended by the thinking subject, the original thinker, right? Maybe, possibility, be apprehended. And I think by default, you know your thoughts. So this is such a low standard that it's easily satisfied just by the original thinker. So since all thoughts may be apprehended by the thinking subject, the original thinker, or by an external mind, okay, so from that reasoning, then all thoughts are objects. Okay, so the definition of thought fulfills the definition of object, right? So therefore, T is a subset of T O prime. All thoughts is a subset of objects. So all thoughts are objects, in other words, but it doesn't mean the other way around. So, and when you see this QED, that means I'm done. I've proven it. I've claimed to prove it, and you can verify it. Hopefully, someone with math skills can verify this. Okay, so therefore, all thoughts are objects, or T is a subset of O prime. Okay, so so here's another mathematical law. To prove a set is equal to B, that A and B are the same set, you must first prove that A is a subset of B, then prove B is a subset of A. So if the two sets are subsets of each other, they're equal. That's called set equality, right? So there's two. It's a two-part proof. If you want to prove something is two sets are equal to each other, you first have to prove one subset way, then the other, then in the reverse, right? So you can see that it's not commutative. This equivalence is not commutative. You can't just switch around the terms and it's true. Just because you know this true, you can't just switch it around. It's like subtraction. It's not commutative. Okay, so therefore A is a subset of B, and B is, if you prove these two, then it holds by definition that A equals B. Okay, so I'm going to need it for this proof. Okay, so proof 2, I'm going to prove that all objective things are objects. And so that's the same thing. Equality is commutative. So in this case, it works both ways. All objective things are objects, and all objects are objective things. Okay, so here's my reasoning. Since any objective thing is being an object of thought, from the definition, right there, object. There you go. Then all objective things is an object. Therefore, objective things is a subset of objects. Okay, so I've shown that first part. So again, it's a two-part proof. I have to first this way, then I have to prove the other way. So I've shown this way. That was easy because being an object of thought. So in order to be an object of thought, you have to first be an object. Okay, so since any little o prime element big O prime, that means any object. Since any object is capable of being an object of thought or perception. So here's the funny thing. Okay, so I'm going to prove this. It's another proof, but I didn't distinguish it. So proof by contradiction. Consider an object, right? A little O prime, an element big O prime, the set of that cannot be the object or thought of or perception. Imagine an object that can't be an object of thought or perception. The fact that it's under consideration, now that you're considering it, makes it an object of thought, right? So you just contradicted yourself. You just contradicted this, cannot be an object of thought or perception. So just the fact that you have to consider it, but it cannot be an object of thought, it contradicts itself right away. So the fact that, so this cannot exist. An object that cannot be an object of thought, in other words. Here's an alternate version that's less technical. Okay, try thinking of something that cannot be objective. Okay, by objective I mean the definition, right? You got to refer to that. By doing so, you've just made it objective, right? Lol, right? Okay, so anyways, so then I've proven this part. So then all objects are objective thing is an element of objective things. Therefore, objects, the set of objects, is a subset of objective things. Since again, I've proven both ways that objects are a subset of objective things and objective things are a subset of objects. They're the same set. All objects are objective things and vice versa, and all objective things are objects. They're the same. QED, I'm done. Okay, so I've proven that, and you'll see I'll refer to the proofs by number. When I have to reuse what I've proven. Okay, so now I'm going to prove proof 3. All thoughts are objective things, right? So proof 3 is all thoughts are objective things, not objects yet. Okay, so, or T subset O, since since T subset O prime, all thoughts are objects, and that was proven by proof 1, then it follows, because they're equal, then all T element T prime, and since all T element O prime, so since all thoughts are objects, I think maybe I should erase this. Then since all thoughts are objects, and by proof 2, all objects are objective things, then it has to follow that all thoughts are objective things. Therefore, all thought is a subset of objective things, QED. Okay, so that's proof 3. All thoughts are objective things. Okay, proof 4. All thoughts are subjective things, and all subjective things are thoughts. Since all thoughts exist in the mind and belong to the thinking subject, right? All thoughts exist in the mind and belong to the thinking subject. Duh, right? This should be in pink. Or actually, it's so strong that it doesn't have to be in pink, right? It's obvious. All thoughts exist in the mind and belong to. This is the definition of subjective. And that's why this follows. Then all thoughts are an element of subjective things. Therefore, all thought is a subset of subjective things. Okay, so here's another possible weakness, which isn't really a weakness. This is relatively weak. And since all subjective things are an act of thinking, mental activity, sensory perception, consideration, or reflection, then all subjective things is an element of thoughts. Therefore, then subjective things is a subset of thoughts, right? So again, I'm referring to the definition of thought here. And all subjective things, when you compare their definitions, they're the same thing virtually, right? Thinking, mental activity, this is the definition of thought. And when you compare it to subjective things existing in mind, these, you can't have one without the other, right? All thoughts are subjective things, all subjective things are thoughts. Then all subjective things are an element of thought. Then all subjective things then all subjective things is a subset of thought. Therefore, I've proven both ways, right? Since all thought is a subset of subjective things and all subjective things is a subset of thought, therefore they're equal. And again, and that's the mathematical law there. In order to prove something's equal, you got to prove subset both ways. Done. QED, right? Quod erat demonstratum. That's what it was to be shown. Okay, so anyways, now I've just proven all thoughts subjective things, and it's kind of intuitive, right? If you think about it, refer back to the definitions if you have to. Okay, so proof 5, all subjective things are a subset of objective things. One of my claims, right? This is one of my critical claims. Subjective is a subset of objective. And so at this point, after I get done with this, I've basically shown Molyneux was wrong to reference the dictionary.com and have faith in such a thing. So anyways, since T equals S, right? Since all thoughts are subjective things and vice versa by proof 4, and thoughts are a subset of objective things by proof 3, then all subjective things are a subset of objective things by transitivity, right? So since T equals S and T is a subset of O, you can just replace this T with the S, and then you'll get this expression. And that's what transitivity in set theory does. Done. I've proven subjective things are a subset of objective things. Now I go on further. Now I'm going to go on. Now these following proofs are just to show that they're not mutually exclusive, which should be apparent by now, right? Since subjective is a subset of objective, they can't be mutually exclusive. Right? But let me do this formally, okay? So proof 6, subjective things is not the null set, right? That means there exists something that's subjective in the real world, right? Okay, so I do this kind of like by proof by contradiction, right? Thoughts exist. I couldn't be writing this, or you could not perceive this if they didn't. It's one of those, I guess Molyneux likes this type of performative contradiction, right? Okay, so it's one of his performative contradiction, which his fallible UPB stands upon, okay? But it's legitimate in this case. It's essentially proof by contradiction, right? And I could do it formally, but I chose to do it more intuitively. You can forgive me for that because I've already done all the hard work. The hard part's already done. I mean, that part, just give me some credit for. Okay, so therefore, subjective. There's such thing as subjective things in the world that exist, right? That means, therefore, S is not the null set, the empty set. The null set is an empty set, a set with no elements. Things that don't exist, like the set of unicorns. That's the null set because there's no unicorns that exist. Okay, so done. Quod erat demonstratum. I need this to further prove that the intersection, and this is how you show some two sets are not mutually exclusive. Is to show two sets are not mutually exclusive, you have to show that their intersection is not the null set. Okay. Verify that later or ask me a question in the comments down below. Okay, so since S is a subset of O by proof 5, then the intersection S and O, all the things that are both at the same time, is S, right? Right. If you picture this in a Venn diagram, you put S inside O, right? So you draw a bigger circle that's concentric with this, that's centered around another smaller circle inside of it. Their intersection is just the inset inside the subset. So the subset is S itself, because S is a subset of O. So their intersection is just a subset, S. And since S and O, the intersection of S and O, is S, and S is non-empty, right, by proof 6, therefore, since this is the same set as that, and this is not the null set, the empty set, then you can just replace S with this, and you'll get this expression by transitivity, right? So the intersection of S and O is not the null set, and therefore they're not mutually exclusive, QED, but it should have followed intuitively from proof 5. But this is done formally here. So I've just shown logical, hard mathematical rigor through rigorous. This is an actual proof here, guys. At least as rigorous as you can get with dictionary definition. This is mathematical proof that Steph was wrong in trusting the dictionary, and my hunch was right that you had to verify that they were logically consistent, because they weren't, right? So okay, so I think at first I said. So anyways, this makes it incumbent upon the person relying on the definition set to either redefine the set or find another set that's logically consistent, right? There may be another alternate definition out there in the philosophy dictionary that actually logically consistent, right? But now, even though there may exist an alternate definition set in another source, not definitely not from dictionary.com, that presents the term objective as mutually exclusive, that properly presents them through definition as mutually exclusive, instead of just by declaration, I claim it's logically consistent. If it's logically consistent, it will match my new definition set that I present in one of my presentations about subjective and objective, or at least, yeah, I have an outline to it on my blog that I'll leave in the description comments below. So you'll have access to this outline and my other blog posts or papers that I write, which are few and far between at this point, but you'll have access to them. Okay, so I claim that if it's logically consistent, it'll match my new definition set. Only the terms will have different names. So if it's logically consistent, I'll probably arrive to the same definition set. I'll just call the terms. I just rename the terms so that objective encompasses everything, reality, because you often refer to objective reality. And again, to say the mind and its products are outside of this reality is just stupid to me. Again, I have a video about trying to make something more special than it already is by saying it's different from its superset. It's called different or special, subset or mutually exclusive, I think. So maybe you want to watch that, and because it has some relevance to this. But again, I've just disproven Stefan Molyneux. While I mean, I wish I could have done this in the heat of the battle, and I just wanted to see the look on his face after he was just face palming and laughing. Call me vindictive or whatever, but my hunch was right, and he was laughing at me. And just the fact that I have the internet exists these days where I can actually vindicate myself. Hopefully someone has enough logical comprehension or mathematical training to verify what I'm saying. Now, again, any critics, I challenge you. I'm challenging you in pink. Right? Attack my pink parts, that's what she said, right? Attack my pink parts. So attack my pink parts, critics. All I have to do is look at my pink parts, because that's where the weaknesses are. Everything in black uses mathematical law, set theory. So anyways, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, criticize. Make sure your criticisms are rigorous, because my presentation was rigorous. I expect reciprocation here. I don't want rationalization with words, bullshit words, because I'm just gonna have to translate your stupid words into mathematical reasoning and show how it's wrong. Okay, so you have to attack me. At least try your best. Try not to be a Molyneux fanboy. I know there's a lot out there, especially yeah, there are those out there. I mean, I don't blame you. The guy's very charismatic, and I respect the guy. But he lacks rigorous logical or mathematical training, and that's why he didn't get what I was trying to say in that interview. But anyways, like, comment, subscribe. I hope you at least criticize, because that's always fun, dealing with valid or actually trying to be valid criticisms. So this is ego utilitarianism. Thanks for watching.